Welcome to the pre-show.
This is the second pre-show. It's like second breakfast.
It is
It's
second
like-
breakfast.
Yeah, this is like second breakfast.
All that laughing has now made my dog.
Your dog's like,
amped up.
whoa!
Ellie's barking at somebody. I think she's barking in general.
Can we just like recreate that moment? And you can bleep yourself, and I'm gonna recreate the face.
You want to tell people of the world? This would be a fantastic clip if you could
if you can pull it off.
blur. I could probably put a blur on it.
Yeah, but you just gotta.
So Jamie.
Yes.
Well, for those that are first-time listeners, I'm in Flint. Jamie's in Texas, in Austin.
I'm in Austin.
So, I live in Flint, work in Flint. I am a downtown Flint supporter. So, Jamie, are you a downtown Flint supporter?
I am a downtown Flint supporter.
I mean,
by default, because by proxy even. Yes, better words.
So, in order to prove it, you deserve one of these. You see that, right? Downtown Flint, Michigan. I was handed this by another downtown Flint supporter named Joel Rash here in Flint.
It's like merch.
Yeah, it's a little merch, little
merch
swag.
From downtown. It's almost like a Main Street thing.
People see these, and you see them on the backs of cars and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But did you know what these three letters are more commonly associated with?
No.
It's very surprising, and I will enlighten you now. So, when people use this acronym, they're more commonly referring to the phrase "down to fuck."
Ooh.
So, are you a downtown Flint supporter? Oh, Jamie, I got you. I can't believe it. I can't believe you didn't know.
Yeah. So that's why we're in the green room, folks. This is the green room.
It is live though, but you know what? We can maybe tame it down for the final cut. Maybe what I'll do is I'll blur out
No. You need to just blur your voice, like.
Oh, I could probably do that. Oh. So because we're live to Twitch and to YouTube right now. Oh man, we're picking up viewers pretty fast now. I guess we figured out the secret. The secret to getting viewers is a little profanity in the world.
Okay.
But our friend Carl, who's so our live stream gets put on Twitch and YouTube, and then the Twitch feed, the YouTube feed runs into a Discord for our friends, our compatriots at Archie Marathon, and our friend Carl then from Archie Marathon's Discord server, he understood the definition of this acronym here. Not downtown Flint, unfortunately. He understood the other definition that Jamie was not aware of.
So he was raising his hand in the audience, like.
Yep. He's he made mention.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the.
I like how you were like, he made mention. It's like you're speaking in cryptic tongues now, and
Well, I'm learning how to demystify things like AIA fellowship.
Oh yeah.
You have to demystify, you have to
attend.
remystify your
You
speech.
have to attend 2 seminars entitled Demystifying Fellowship. The first of which you go, "Why am I here?" And then the second one, you're like, "What did they say the first time that they're changing their mind on this second time?"
And then they put robes on you.
No, I don't want a robe. I don't want a robe. Is there robes involved in this?
There might be.
Have you seen that movie, Eyes Wide Shut?
Oh yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah. Is that the
I
kind of
mean,
robes? Is that the kind of robes we're talking about?
I don't know. There might be a handshake or a couple of knocks. You know, a secret.
Is there like Venetian masks? Do we get to wear Venetian masks?
We should, regardless.
We should do that on one episode. Just come in with like Venetian masks on.
Well, you know,
It'd be like a Mardi Gras episode.
yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, but that would mean we have to wait till like February.
Like
But-
throw beads at each other.
You know, I have been recently doing a little, what do you call it? Database, archiving, I suppose, of the podcast.
So
You know,
that's where you've been.
Yeah. You see how tired I am and sweaty? It's so grueling.
I'm just driving all over the state of Texas, so don't even get me going.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, in the 1,000-degree heat.
Well, that's why all the lights are off in the house, because it's just
Yeah.
like you need to like
I hear you.
perception of
Well,
like.
you have one big light called the sun that's beaming down.
Boy.
No, the archiving. So I've been trying to categorize the 127, this being 128 episodes that we have, and it's actually kind of a fun process to look back to the 5 seasons that we have produced.
It's the before times.
Yeah, well, it is a fun throwback, especially pre-pandemic.
It is Throwback Thursday, so and you brought
We are
that up on your
recording
own.
this on a Throwback Thursday.
Yeah, and I didn't even cue you up. I didn't even give you a prompt, other than the fact that while we've been talking, in our pre-green room when we forgot to hit record, or at least just kind of open the door to the green room. I think that's sort of like it's more like we're opening the door to the green room and letting folks in.
Yeah.
Pouring them a cup of coffee. But yeah, so while we were doing that, I was posting to Instagram a throwback image of my own.
Oh, were you?
Yes, I was. From that summer where we decided, hey man, should we do a podcast?
I found it. Let me grab that. I want it. Oh, I see. That's why. Well, unfortunately, I was not there in the photo that you took, but
No.
good times. The before time.
M took that photo.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Make sure you credit your photographers, people.
Yep.
Don't here. Let me let's share that while we're here in this green room. It'll be a little pop quiz trivia for architectural history. I have to find. There we go. Sorry, people. I'm slow moving. Sneak peek some other stuff. So this is the new post from Jamie. It's not a sketch, but it's a photo of a sketch being made of. Do you know that building? And if you don't know that building,
do you know the acronym DTF?
Did Louis Kahn know that acronym? Hint. But yeah. So this is what, 2018, 19?
2018.
Yeah. So it's so again. It reminds me of our chat with Ed Vance in San Francisco, and how he recognized the diagonal. Tilt the sketchbook on the diagonal And in my mind, I felt like that was a much more recent thing. But here you are in 2018 with a photo of you sketching on that bias, which now it's like, so now the question is, when did you first start doing that, Jamie? Do you even know?
I don't know, but I do have the sketchbooks to go back and dig. There's tubs of sketchbooks, so
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. This is the Kimball Art Museum by Louis Kahn, which is, it's on the bucket list for me. You know, one of those architectural pilgrimage sites that I have not yet been to, but I did last week, which is a delay in our podcast release. I did last week get to check off another bucket list site, which was the Johnson Wax Museum by Philip Frank Lloyd Wright, our old friend Frank Lloyd Wright.
Philip Frank Lloyd. I'm gonna name some children after all the names. Give me all of them.
We're doing a little architecture history here. Johnson Wax Building. I'm gonna drop a picture next to your sketch here. Let's grab this one. Copy.
And if this was AI, folks, we would just go, what would Philip Johnson and Frank Lloyd Wright's child look like?
Future episode. So this is the administration building. I hope everybody is familiar with this one. And it was a lot of fun to see it in person. And it basically kind of like my point, I guess, by raising this up real quick, compared to our your sketch of Kimball, and I'm sure you can agree, or you're about to agree with what I'm going to say, is photographs are nice. You know, this is a nice photograph of the Frank Lloyd Wright building. Being in the space is a totally different understanding and experience of space. And spending some time, even though the tour kind of moved us, we're about in the space about 20 minutes or so, maybe a little longer, but it definitely felt short. It has a whole, it just doesn't, it has a very different reaction in that space. You know, this photo, I think, is probably taken from that sort of mezzanine level, not from the ground floor. And the perspective makes it feel much taller and voluminous, bigger. But when you're actually, so we didn't get up to the mezzanine level, but we were allowed to stand in the main office floor, kind of right where this desk is. And while it is a double height space, it doesn't feel gigantic. It has a very comfortable proportion. I think maybe because the width, like the horizontal expanse of it compared to the two-story nature of it was a very comfortable, and plus the tons of light coming from the ceiling past these columns. And so anyway, so my point is, you really have to go visit the building. You can't just always rely on photographs of spaces.
So I'm gonna ask you to put like a pin in the rest of that story, because I want you to hold the rest of that story, and really in both of these images actually, because I think it's probably time for the episode.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right then. All right, let me. They switched up my my interface here, so it always slows me down when they do that. All right, I will.
It makes you It makes you more charming,
endearing, more DTF. Oh, hey, Jamie. Whoops. Let me hide that for a second. How's it going?
Good, good. Always a good start to the episode when we're giggling and, technical mishaps and
Technical errors.
abbreviations for things that we can't say on air. So,
Yeah.
we're doing good.
Downtown Flint.
Yeah, downtown.
Location. So, I've got a bunch of swag, but some of which we save for the green room, and then others I can share. But
That show before the show, folks. For those who are listening on a podcast,
right.
There is a show before the show. Yes, we actually do a lot of this live, if you can believe it. Like, I wouldn't know why you wouldn't think we're doing it live, because clearly we do not have a script. As we learned from our friends Evan and Cormac, that there is really no need for a script. They've been doing this a lot longer than us. So shout out to them again for having us on. This is 128. The episode right before this, a little bit different. Kurt gives it a great introduction, but it is a crossover episode. So their 300th episode and our 127th.
Yeah, and it was generous of Evan and Cormac to allow us to co-post upload. I don't know. Our 127 is the same recording, and it was nice that we were allowed to share. And
it's like a super group. It's like a super group, dude. It's like I know that you have your metal moments. It's like when, yeah, exactly, and it's like when, what's the one super group? Is it They Might Be Vultures? Is that right? Is that what I'm saying?
Were you thinking of the Eagles of death metal?
No. I'm gonna find this, and you're gonna be like,
kind of like,
oh, wait a minute.
If we could compare it to when AC/DC lead singer went deaf and Axl Rose jumped right in and finished their concert or their tour, and I happened to be at that tour stop in Detroit where Axl Rose sang for AC/DC, and I think it went very well.
That's pretty good. Yeah, this is not a story I've heard before, and that's not, and it's in my aging brain. It's not They Might Be Vultures. It's Them Crooked Vultures.
Grammar, please.
It's like a grammar thing, but it sounds way cooler.
But so who's in that? I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so and I have seen them, and this was when Foo Fighters were at ACL. So you had Foo Fighters headlining they were one of the headliners for ACL several years ago. But then on a side stage, earlier in the day, Dave Grohl, in his side project supergroup, Them Crooked Vultures.
Oh.
Well, back on drums. So he was the drummer in yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Dave Grohl also did a thing called Probot, which would feature lead singers or sometimes main components of other bands, metal bands. Well, maybe not all metal, but and then the Foo Fighters, and it was called Probot, which so he's basically just the creator of supergroups, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is like Queens of the Stone Age and Led Zeppelin and Foo Fighters.
Oh yeah. Them Crooked Vultures.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look that up. We did just acquire a premium Spotify subscription,
so
I can listen ad-free now.
Yeah, worth a jumping back in time. I don't know. I don't know what I think it was just sort of your mention of different architects and
right,
and then multiple podcasts and us getting the
our friends over at Speak.
Yeah, it just kind of hit me. It's like a team up, you know. It's like, yeah, it
Like
was good.
more heads, right? Like 2 heads are better than 1. 4
I think you just took
better
it
than
down a notch. I was like up on like team ups and super groups, and then you're like, 2 heads are better than 1. Thanks, buddy.
Okay. Okay. Well,
All right.
got it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for
I liked your story better about, shows in LA, but you just didn't
that
want to
was
go.
Detroit, the
Oh,
AC/DC concert.
I thought you said LA. Didn't you say LA at one
No,
point?
I said Detroit, in Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, well, it was their leg of through the Detroit, well, the whatever. Yeah, it was just great. Axl Rose, which
Yeah.
I had never seen Guns N' Roses live, so it's kind of like I
Oh,
got a little bit of both.
yeah. See, I do have you there because I was one of those like painful people, or not pained people who suffered through the Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 tour, where that was the point where GNR, like, they would just not, like, they're like, that time on the schedule, that's just a suggestion.
I've thankfully never been to a concert where we were what do you call it, second class, or subject to the whims of the lead act.
Yeah,
I
this
don't
was
think I would. I probably wouldn't wear that well.
Yeah.
Especially not these days, right? When you go to a concert and beer's like $15 for one beer.
Yeah,
Can't
that makes it hard. Yeah.
Anywho, one other. What about Audio Slave? Does that meet the
Yes.
super
Yes.
group? Yeah, there we go. I redeemed myself.
Yeah. Well, oh, man, it just went away from me.
Oh, you're talking about the other one with Chuck D.
Yes.
The Rage.
Damn it.
Oh God.
No. Now
Who
you
knows
got.
the answer? Who's watching? Somebody tell us the answer.
I mean,
Go
you have
look at the
Cypress
chat.
Hill,
Yeah, I know.
Chuck D, Rage
And
Against the
and Rage.
Machine.
I actually saw them in Detroit too. That was awesome.
What?
Yeah, I got a ticket to that show
No.
when they went on tour, and now I can't remember the name, but that was that was awesome.
Prophets of Rage.
Prophets of Rage. Good one. Nobody chimed in, but well,
Chuck
if you haven't
D.
heard,
Chuck D. Quite the sketcher, by the way.
yeah.
If you follow Chuck on the socials, you will definitely get a peek inside his sketchbook. And he is incredibly prolific.
Yeah. It's and
And I just like called him Chuck like I know him. I mean, it's like, it's like, what the hell?
Oh, I think I think he's a fan of the podcast.
Sure.
Cypress Hill just did a Tiny Desk concert.
I saw that. It was so good. It was so good. Yes.
I love the stories. And the comments, because it was, it streams on YouTube. And so someone asked if Sendog's hat was the same hat from original recording times, and the NPR being a reputable media source, fact checked the question and confirmed that it is the same hat all those years later. How cool is that?
I like how you're like a reputable news source.
Well, I want to be polite, but not. I don't want to get into the weeds.
No, definitely not. No puns there at all. With Cypress Hill. So yeah.
One more tiny desk. We got into this music tangent from the get-go, but Juvenile also did a Tiny Desk.
Oh yeah, he was before. Yeah.
Before
Yeah.
Cypress.
And that
one is, I think, even better. And he brought in supporting trumpets and horns and backup singers, and and they and they didn't censor any words, which was a special occasion because it is Tiny Desk, but it came off. Oh, that was cool. I'm really starting to, and I appreciate, Anyway, I'm going way off on a tangent, but I was very appreciative of how they framed, through Black History Month, and they recorded, a lot of influential, Black history or Black recording artists, or say minorities, because you got the Latinx in there too with Cypress Hill. So
have you seen Wu-Tang Tiny Desk?
Oh yeah, but that one's a little older, isn't it?
Yeah, oh, it's way older, but yeah,
Yeah,
like classic.
Well, they have ODB's son. I mean, if it's Wu-Tang, I'm watching it. I mean, I grew up on the East Coast.
You're like, if it's Wu-Tang, I'm watching it. So, what are you talking about, Jamie?
I watched the TV show. Have you seen the TV show?
No, I've not.
That they produced.
I don't know how you consume as much streaming as you do, but that's okay.
Please don't tell Danielle, because she's with you on that one. So these eyes were made to be used.
It's where Kurt disappears to at night. It's just like, I have so many shows I must watch.
Right? Yeah. I mean, the shout out to the writers and actors who are on strike, because it's it's gonna be some dark times in the near future. And that's not speaking personally. I mean, they're going through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
but as creatives, and we had like we said, we had, circling back to the beginning of this, we had a great conversation with Evan and Cormac that is continuing about the four of us have kind of a conversation thread that just continues, where we're talking about being a creative and, what that means, and where those influences come from. And so, if nothing else, that's been a treat as well. But yeah, for all the creatives out there who are trying to, fight for what they deserve, then that's, more power to them.
Mm-hmm. And I'm with you. Having lived part of my life in LA, I know a few of these people in the guilds, and I'm with you, because it ain't easy. So, and I would say, I'm sure Jamie is also. So Coffee Sketch Podcast is supportive of our creatives. So well,
so episode 128, buddy. Here it is.
Here we are, and
we're just gonna start celebrating. Like, where's that button? It's like we were talking about, like the horn. We need the just like
we need one of these. Maybe if we make a little money on some merch, like this T-shirt or mugs.
Pop really liked the mug. He did. He's pretty tickled by it.
Oh, that's great.
My mom had no idea. She's like, "What is that?"
Well, but
she's like, it kind of looks like one of Jamie's drawings. Is that what it is? It's like, thanks, Mom. Thanks. Yep.
Well, at least she picked up on some stylistic cues.
Oh yeah. Well,
I did share the logo. Well, I was talking. So our friends over at Archie Marathon were in town, stateside, and so we were in Chicago last week, or I drove over to Chicago to become chauffeur to Kevin and Andrew, who came in from Australia. Well, by way of Spain and Portugal.
So this is like your driving Mr. Leapskin moment.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, keep going. I'm right there with you.
So we talking about the podcast a little bit and talking about their YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed, you should check it out. But I showed them your sketch, the logo sketch, and how we somehow got in a conversation about Carlos Scarpa and influences and things like that, and they could pick up the the Castelvecchio, references and hints in our logo. And Jamie drew the logo. I might have said, here's some ideas on. It's called Coffee Sketch. That's
Come on,
about it,
buddy.
maybe.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then so I'm a super fan of the logo, and so I gladly, I wore this T-shirt. I was like, find me wearing this T-shirt. But anyway, um, it's just the fun part is like I guess my point being, aside from meeting up with these guys, go and check out Johnson Wax Building in Racine, Wisconsin, and some other stuff in Chicago. Is that the power of the sketch and your stylistic interpretations and stuff still resulted in uh, key visual references and cues and things like that. And I think that's probably the bigger picture of it all is.
Well, I mean, it could have been, there were those moments. I've got those other sketches where it's, a nude female figure like next to, the Apollo rocket superimposed on the Washington Monument with a little bit of Lebbeus Woods kind of terrain. I mean, that could have been the logo. I mean, even though that sketch came along much, much later. But I like the Rodin, coffee cup and Castelvecchio, inspiration all kind of working together. It really speaks to us and kind of what we've been doing and having fun with this and not taking it too seriously, but at the same time, making a real genuine nod to the influences that both of us have.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll probably sound biased, but when you nail it, sometimes you just nail it.
Well,
And
and
so
and,
there
and
it
for
be.
for the viewers who are like, wow, Kurt's being really nice to Jamie. It's because Jamie sometimes doesn't like the logo. And but no, I do like it. I do like it. And so and I do want to hear more about this trip. So let's get some images up on the screen and talk about some buildings and
although we didn't talk about coffee yet, and I did want to talk about. So before we flash to some imagery here, since I want to talk about it so much, I am drinking a new roast from Rootless, our friends in Flint at Rootless, called Light Bright. And I wish the camera would pick it up, but they use this nice foil bag that is sort of iridescent, and so you can't really. I don't know. I don't think it's picking it up as much as you could see it in person, but which now just means I have to send Jamie a bag of this. But it's called Light Bright, and so it's a light medium roast. Papua New Guinea Lahamenugu. I'm not going to pronounce that very well at all. And the tasting notes though are berry, cantaloupe, and dried cranberry.
Ooh.
Which is what it kind of caught my attention, because it's very similar to my other favorite, Berry Kiss. And so when you brew this, when you're grinding the beans, they sort of give off those aromas, the tartness, the berry tartness, and it still carries through when you're in your first few sips. So this is going to start to compete for my.
Are you saying that's on the way?
New favorite.
Like, is this another one of those teaser coffees? Like, hey, this is really great. It might be in the mail.
That's true.
Okay.
It could be.
That sounds great.
And yeah, I can't wait for you to tell
Yeah,
me what you think.
because we're down to the dregs of coffee here. Like there's not much left.
Well, you are gonna, I know. Well, see, there's timing issues, but the very next shipment that is should be arriving tomorrow is the batch of the coffee sketch coffee. Finally, right,
Did
just in time shipping, right
did
before you.
did you hear the choirs of angels singing like in that
Yeah,
moment?
Ah, that's my choir. Yeah, so once you get it, you got to crack that. I haven't even cracked it open yet because to be fair, I,
Okay.
I didn't I didn't want to spoil the fun. So
Yeah, when I crack that open and like grind the first and brew the first cup, I will definitely be letting you know when that's happening so that we can synchronize watches and all that good stuff.
and yeah, and also the first shipment to our special guests has started to go out, starting with
Mm.
our our soundmeister Charlie, my brother. So since he is the very first sort of the baseline, to
He's the
our
OG
musical.
interview. He is the OG
Yeah.
interview.
So
So
so it's gonna be sequential. So they're rolling out. So our guests are gonna. So Cormac, hold your horses. It's coming.
yeah, we have to get it out to the family apparently. But it's also, for those listeners who want to go back and find that episode, there's a whole lot of me at the very beginning going, "Oh my god, like you guys look the same. Um,
Twins.
you're twins."
How does that
It's like a
work?
it's like one of those kind of proof of life kind of things. But yeah,
Yeah, especially when you don't live in the same state. It's like, yeah, prove it. It's not Photoshop. So, what about you? Are you drinking anything, or you just s- you're at the bottom of the barrel?
I had to like I had to go get like some coffee and um,
Gas station coffee? Is it that
no,
desperate?
no, 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 we're not. No, no, no. But I did. You did mention that there might be stuff coming, so I went to um, uh, get it. I got community coffee, which I do like, um, and as sort of a base, um, they have um, a good kind of base coffee for me. So
Some reserves.
yes, so that's the reserves. That's the easy reserve. Like when the other ones like, and I can't decide like what else, and so I'm not going to get another bag of something else to grind. I'm just going to get something that's sort of comfortable. So
Well, that's good. So, Jamie, while I pull up the some images here, do we want to quickly answer a live comment? If yeah, have you
yeah,
seen? Do
no,
you see the
yeah,
comment? So,
I see it come up, and like the
and I
first
think
thing,
it
and
kind
it
of
and
fits in with some of the imagery that we're
it,
might
it
be
does
talking
it
about.
does I think it does a little bit, and I think that the thing I would say is it's funny because I don't I was one of those people who always forgot how many semesters I was in school. So I was never that person who was like, this is the such and such semester of architecture. But I do appreciate all the people who do that because it is a trek. And
Mhm.
I do not try and make light of that other than my own um, wayward journey, I guess, through the process where and that might have been, a defense mechanism for myself is like, I wasn't always like trying to admit to myself how many semesters I had done or how many I had left to do. So I do appreciate that. But when I see those kinds of statements, that's the thing that always sort of stands out to me. So, please don't take that any other way than me just making fun of myself.
Well, it's like the marathon, not the sprint.
Right,
If
right.
if you're familiar with that analogy, but Paulo if you don't mind adding, um, what either what country or what school
Yeah,
you're
school
attending,
or
because the semesters, uh, the concepts of semesters, as Jamie was kind of alluding to, and like for me, we kind of looked at it as years. So for me, it was like a 5-year process, and each year was sort of a milestone.
see, and I didn't even have that, Kurt. You know, I'm like maybe I'm just the oddball. Like for me, like the way I looked at it was like before I went to Italy and studied abroad, which was
Uh-huh.
my junior year, so third year in our program. But uh, like it was the before time and then the after time.
Before Italy, after well,
Yeah, like that was because I think that was sort of my uh, that was my moment to kind of really where it all started to make sense. I mean, and I'm probably making that um, you know oh
oh,
wow, okay,
same.
awesome. In
Oh, in Ecuador.
in Ecuador. Okay,
Oh,
great. Well,
cool.
thank you for joining us. No, and I think that well, a library. First of all, I would say um, my thesis project when I was in school, and this is like quite a long. I was in school a long time ago. I will admit that. But my thesis project was a library, and so I think that, um, and that wasn't necessarily because I was sort of enamored by that program, but I think one of the things that attracted me to it was that a library in a modern context, and even in a historical context, always is a place for people. But at the same time, it also has sort of challenging program needs in that um, it's a repository of information, so it's a place of education, right? Um, but at the same time, um, it's a bit democratic in the sense that it's agnostic to all the information. It's trying to present this body of knowledge to everybody. And how do you contain that body of knowledge, whether it's a specialty library or just sort of a general library, and how does that also sort of speak to where it is in a place? Because the library is sometimes also the gateway to so many other places in the world for so many people. Like you're reading about places or studying about places that you haven't been to, and the library is that gateway. But at the same time, you're present in the space, so it's a portal. It's a place of imagination. It's a place of study and intellect and gathering, and then technology. I mean, and that was the thing that I was sort of enamored with when I was doing my project was how much technology was changing related to libraries and digital information and archival information. As we've talked about on the podcast before, I have a preservation background, so there's an aspect of my student work where I have drawings in the Library of Congress, in Washington D.C. And it's that archival material is really really important to that facility and to that place. But then on the flip side, we have a podcast like this where we talk about newer technologies and digital technologies, and how that transfer of information um, is constantly evolving. So I think both things can happen in the same space and also with the same designer. And so I think allowing yourself to think about those things, as you're working on your project, is that's my first big piece of advice: is allow yourself to both look at the past but also dream about the future.
Yeah. And I would add, and why I threw in another picture here, because it's I think what if you can sort of think about what Jamie has said, and sort of read into it a little deeper too, and think about how then conceptually can you manifest space that relates to this notion of a library, right? Relative to the archives or information stored within, right? So if you do wind up choosing to be sort of a general collection or a specific collection, and then how that would affect or impact the shaping of the space. And so what sort of tying in back to my trip in Chicago, my brief trip to Chicago, meeting up with Archie Marathon, is we I suggested we walk. We were very close, staying very close to this building in the lower right, which is John Ronan's Poetry Foundation, um, which is a collection specific for poetry books or the written form, archives of poetry, things like that. And it's not a very big building, and honestly, this metal skin that wraps around is not even the separation between inside and outside. It's sort of the separation from sidewalk to inner courtyard, and then you move into the building. And this notion of sort of layered space and sequence and procession from, say, the public realm on the sidewalk through a sort of semi-private outdoor courtyard and then into the building is kind of like peeling away layers of a story and a sequence of movement.
Well, and
And
it's like when you and I did our first live episode in Houston at the Drawing Institute. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
effectively a library for drawings in Houston by the Manil, by Renzo Piano, but the Drawing Institute, the newest building on the campus, by one of Kurt's favorite architects.
Johnston
And
Berkeley.
it's the same kind of thing where you have this sequence of spaces that are creating um, layers of rooms that eventually lead you into the collection, and really kind of engage a patron or the public in different ways. I'd say that the Kimball, the image that Kurt has on the screen to the left, and where I'm doing that sketch, this is the approach that was first presented to me of the Kimball, and it is not Khan's intended entrance to the building.
Mm.
And what you're seeing there, sort of in the foreground, is some Noguchi sculptures. And what was sort of brought to my attention when we first visited this, when I was a student of architecture, in my third semester, had to think about it for a minute, was that this was a place where it was okay to loiter. It was okay to stay a while. It was okay to kind of absorb the space. And so when I go back there, I always take a minute to spend a little bit of time in that space. And in this case was an opportunity to sketch, but I share it that way because it really does sort of relate to what Kurt was sort of describing about the Ronan building and kind of the layers of space there in Chicago.
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna try and grab a picture that I took, and of course I didn't. I'm a terrible photographer. Um, Here, this is probably the best example, and I'll throw this in real quick. Adjacent, so this is the interior, and the last. I'll let it load for a sec here. Just to sort of touch on it one more time, is it, and kind of similar to Jamie. Well, it's really following along what Jamie said about Kimball's space and the uh, allowing people to take the time and use the space as they see appropriate, right? So a freedom, right? A sort of um, what do you call undeclared or
unprogrammed space,
unprogrammed space that the user gets to decide.
which
And so,
which from as a student of architecture, your professor is going to be like throwing their hands up. What do you mean unprogrammed space? But I think as a designer yourself, as you start to mature, and sort of ask yourself and interrogate your own work, um, sometimes those moments to think about those unprogrammed moments, where people are going to be people,
mhm.
in your design is a good place to set your thoughts for a little bit.
Yeah, and so the piece that I was intending to add is really the experience that I got out of the Poetry Foundation building is is what came to mind is that, the teaching that I teach at a university here in Michigan, and not the University of Michigan, but a other university in the same state. Um, anyway, is to not forget about how the building meets the context, the rest of the urban condition or whatever surroundings it has, right? So like Poetry Foundation has this corner site, but you don't enter the building straight off the corner. I mean, you enter into the space, but you don't actually enter into the interior of the enclosed building until you walk through this courtyard. So on the right hand side is the actual entry door, which is deep into this courtyard space. And the courtyard itself, as I understand, is intended to be an outdoor room that can be used to recite for poets to recite and have casual poetry recitals or gatherings in an outdoor realm. So it has these nicely planted. I think they're a type of elm tree, very low. Some public, some loose seating, and this concrete and gravel patio that sort of sets up a sort of movement, a sort of meandering movement into the front door. So basically, don't ignore, there's the program that you're given, the amount of space that you have to create of a building, but don't forget about how you can leverage outdoor space in conjunction or in tandem with indoor space, and how that movement between spaces strengthens each other. So anyway, so that's my take on so hopefully, Paulo, you take that, and if you have any other questions, let us know. But I think that's I think you have a really interesting project coming up, and
And thanks
there's
for
a lot of ways to
yeah,
think.
thanks for asking like a kind of a good kind of pointed advice question. I think it's great.
Yeah, and it fits right in with what we really were planning on talking about. I think well, at least in the same vein. uh that's what we call serendipity in in a world, right? So so Jamie, what else did you
Well, you got this picture of the Johnson Wax building,
yeah.
like from a magazine, and I'm assuming it's a magazine shot. I have no idea.
Well, I'll tell you why. Yeah,
But
we weren't allowed to take pictures of the
what?
inside ourselves.
What?
No, just the outside.
Like that's painful. Like
It is,
like
but
did they allow you enough time to sketch inside this space?
oh yeah,
Or
I've
or
got
did they
I got a really
or did they
clunky sketch if you.
I mean, or did they just hustle you through?
Well, it was quick. They didn't necessarily hustle. And let's see if I can pull up. Where's my? Oh, I don't think I. Oh, it's on my iPad. Well, I do have a photo of here. This is about the best I can do of of a of an image. But yeah, so the rules were you were not allowed to take a picture inside any building.
Is this like Fight Club?
Well, I guess it's private property, so they had rules.
Okay. Okay.
They still so while they don't use the Frank Lloyd Wright design spaces anymore
Mhm.
for day-to-day operations, SC Johnson, the company, still uh, this is their part of their campus,
Okay.
and they have sort of more modern facilities right next door, that they're all their laboratories and things like that are housed in, um, in administration buildings and things like that. But they um, no longer use these spaces, so it really is turned into a museum. So it's still private property, and so they can make their own rules. But so basically, on the left,
Didn't they shoot?
you
Didn't
have
they shoot Gattaca in here or something?
I don't know that
Maybe.
that did not come up in the conversation.
Okay. I'm just. I'm. I
So
think. I think that might be. That might be true, but I'm not sure.
we'll have to do some fact checking. But on the left is an interior from some publication somewhere that I Googled. And on the right is my picture as you're approaching this lobby. So this is the entry sequence into the space. So there's a canopy, a very low slung, very Frank Lloyd Wright signature move, if there was one, is compressing your entrance into the space and then sort of expanding into a nice tall space, which you see on the left. And the only difference that you can't see, well, is that the desks are all empty now. All the clutter is gone. But yeah, so we took the tour. So we met up in Chicago, and then we drove up to Racine, which is only about an hour and a half north of Chicago. Um, had a tour scheduled through the admin building, which is this, and then the research tower as well, which is probably the iconic. And I'll try and grab that image also for those who are not familiar. But if you're not,
Well, and
I
as you're
don't.
pulling up that image, what strikes me is that we literally just had, like, going back a couple episodes, like two maybe. We were talking about Snowheada's work here in Austin with their pedals in the plaza, and so the minute you started talking about this, that's where my mind went with the Johnson wax, is like the that
Hmm.
those iconic type elements, um, that is sort of ingrained in every architect, who's looked at sort of Western traditional, modernism. And then I see those, and then I look at what Snowheada does at the Blanton in Austin, and you know, don't tell me that there's not something in their brain and there's some design moment where somebody says, this makes me feel like the Johnson Wax building. Because if you pan over to the left there a little bit.
Oh, right. The last one.
No, just right there. No,
Oh,
yeah,
oh.
where the pedals don't touch, right? But they almost kind of come up and almost kiss each other,
Hmm.
like lily pads, or whatever. I've heard them described so many different ways, but I think that's that tension of those forms is kind of a wonderfully interesting and beautiful thing. Yeah, and there's that Blanton sketch that I had done. I mean, obviously the pedals are very, very different, once they get up to the upper piece, but yeah, I think that the idea is sort of there.
I think you're right though. That subliminal influence and I think, well, I mean, there's a combination of, say, like, and sorry, I'm hinting and giving away too many other sketches that
Whew, lots of
for
sketches, lots and
future
lots of
episodes.
sketches.
But there's a combination between geometry, say mathematics, geometry, and and um, and structural capacity, right? And so, how do you then shape space that challenge both the geometric composition if I'm trying to keep it simple, and then the structural, bearing capacity, right? And say Blanton, a different material, different setting. It's more outdoor. But Frank Lloyd Wright, and so they both have their constraints as far as gravity and structure and things like that. But as architects, we're working on enclosing or creating space, creating a volume or an envelope, a container, or a frame, even. Keep it simple. And how do you structure that? And then what are the dimensions and proportions and so on? And I think um, some of those constraints, like gravity, for example, cannot be altered on Earth, at least, right? Other planets, something else. But here, that's one force that has a challenge that you can't avoid.
But the beauty is
Which,
also challenging it, like
mhm,
Wright does with these, Snowhetta does with theirs, Zaha Hadid, did magically with her paintings, and then later with her built work. So
mhm, right, and yeah, so yeah, I think that the concept of influence and form generation um, can kind of transcend across these various generations. It's kind of interesting. I guess you brought up the idea of, like, last week's conversation about the Blanton, and that's where I'm going with it, is sort of this interesting uh just this interesting sort of subliminal tie-in, or I don't want to say subliminal, but I can't think of a better word. And so yeah, so that's kind of been, it was a whirlwind little trip. Probably still some things that we'll unpack, like on future episodes. Just little tidbits about Chicago and Racine and the toll roads between.
right. Well, and just to, I know we're kind of bumping up against our time here, but um, we've touched on travel, we've touched on the sketch, and then we've sort of got me there, kind of off to the left, and I made a nod to the fact that sketch was um, kind of the birth of this podcast that summer. And so there's a fair amount of nostalgia that we've been going through of late, with our 300th episode with Cormac and Evan, and then sort of things that we've been thinking about, sort of. This is my opportunity to say, thank you. You did it, very masterfully, and as a beautiful surprise for me, when we were talking with them in their episode, our crossover super group team up. But I wanted, to thank you for, convincing me that we could talk about sketches that no one could see, and have a beautiful conversation of two architect friends over coffee. And now 5 years later, we're still having a hell of a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's it's uh it, it's also been fun. I didn't know where to start replying to that, but now we have some new technology with some visual aids now, so it maybe either makes our lives easier or adds another wrinkle to the process, but it's a lot of fun. So yeah, thanks. No, we I think it was a good chat, and there's still more to unpack in future episodes.
And lots more sketches.